Guys, how are you doing? In the last video I spoke about how my sense of humor sometimes gets me into hot water. It did in this annual work appraisal that I also mentioned, but I had a few juicy cards up my sleeve for my floor manager, who thought he was going to slice me a new rectum. I did end up being dismissed in the end, but he got disciplined too, after I managed to hit a weak point that I had there, in my hand of cards, when he was ready to start his games. He was one of these people who would move slyly, and he was very conniving, and would often pounce like a snake with his venom. I witnessed him do that to a few people, and I was always on guard, ready to protect myself from his bite and venom. How the appraisal started was, he was very charming and complimentary about a few of my achievements regarding targets that I had hit, personally, along with other colleagues, and I'm sat there, knowing that he was going to change tune and pounce with something to take me completely off guard, as he had done this on numerous occasions before, with less serious stuff than was going to be discussed today. Anyway, after the softening up ended, he started saying, "Listen, William." I thought to myself, William? Everyone, including himself, calls me Billy. What's with the formal William bullshit? I thought. I've had 2 complaints from customers, who claim that your tone and your demeanor are very unusual. I am like, what the fuck? The assistant manager had this expression on his face, like he knew he was going to have to try not to laugh, and the shop supervisor was not even looking at me. It was like he was secretly laughing to himself, and I thought, what the fuck is this all about? Then our floor manager took the stage, in his egotistical fashion. In February of this year, you told a customer that you were not going to charge him a toll fee for not buying anything, and you further added, "It's okay, we are not a street gang from El Salvador." Can you please explain to me what the meaning of that was, please, William, and why you felt you had to say that? I caught the eye of the assistant manager, who had a very faint smirk on his face, and as for the shop supervisor, he couldn't even look at me, and his face was slightly turned to the side. So I knew that there was no way that I could look at the assistant manager, or otherwise, I was fucking toast. So I replied, "Look, it was tongue-in-cheek, and light-hearted humor." Well, that's not the way the customer saw it. In fact, he sounded very offended when he spoke to me on the phone, and as for the email he sent me, I am not even going to go there, because he called for your dismissal. I replied, with all due respect, Stephen, he is calling for my dismissal because you may have been having a bad day, when his sense of light-hearted fun wasn't at its usual level. It doesn't matter whether he was having a bad day or not, but you need to learn to watch your P's and Q's, William, or you are going to end up in serious trouble, and I am not even at the juicy bit yet, of something else you said to a customer. What was that then? I replied. A customer asked you what you had planned for your day off, and you replied, "I am going to be dressed up in a rubber suit, having my breathing restricted." What? What did you think you were doing, William, and what the hell were you thinking? Maybe I misjudged his sense of humor, Stephen, I don't know. I quickly gazed at the assistant manager, and he looked like he was millimeters away from howling with laughter, and the supervisor had his head down, trying as hard as he could to hide his amusement. Then Stephen replied, "Look, William, a bit of light-hearted small talk is one thing, but if I decide to continue your employment, one word of advice, keep your private life to yourself." That was it. My blood fucking boiled. I replied very angrily, "What, you think I spend my days dressing up like Darth Vader, being fantasizing about asphyxiation?" He replied, "Why say it then?" Then he turned to the assistant manager and supervisor and asked them, angrily, "What is so funny?" So they quickly straightened their faces. So that was it for me. It was time to play my trump cards, and fucking play them I did. So straight away, I asked Stephen, "Do you remember when Janet left?" "What has that got to do with this, William?" "Let me enlighten the whole room," I replied sarcastically. On her very last day, and before I could get the rest of the words out, the fucking color drained from his face, and he apprehensively looked to the assistant manager for support, in a frightened way, as if he was a rabbit caught in the headlights. I would have loved a camera at that particular moment. He nervously replied, "What about Janet's last day?" "It was your day off." "No, it wasn't. Fridays is your day off, Stephen, and I saw you outside the staff entrance with a cuddly toy." the very day Janet was leaving. He turned to his assistant manager for support, and said, "Look, he's off his nut, don't listen to him." So I pulled out my smartphone and showed Stephen and the two beside him a photo of him outside the staff entrance, that I had took on my afternoon break, and it was dated the very day Janet left the company. Stephen erupted and leaned over the table at me, as if he wanted to grab me. I then told him, "Oh, and by the way, I showed Janet this photo of you, and that was why she got her fiancé to propose to her on the shop floor, just before the end of her shift, and they left through the store entrance. Everyone shared their happiness that afternoon, except you and you little fucking mate Garfield." He grabbed me around the throat with his bare hands and threw me back on the table. When I was getting my breath back, the other two were rolling around on the floor, laughing like hyenas. Stephen then screamed at me, at the top of his voice, "You're sacked, now get out, and don't come back, you Welsh cunt." That was when I was living in North London. He had a thing for Janet, and she knew he did, and she wasn't fucking interested. He tested the water with her in a very sly way, and she saw through it. When she wasn't in, like on her days off or holidays, it was always Janet this, Janet that, and what an asset to our team she is. She was always briefed about that too, when she returned to work. There was no way he was even getting close to her. We all had her back. He thought he was going to cut me a new ass to shit from in that appraisal, and he did not expect to come back like that from me. No one had ever done that to him before, according to the assistant manager and the supervisor that walked me out of the store, after that charade. That was the very last I saw of them, and that shop. After that I went back to my old trade of painting and decorating for the rest of the time I was in London. I had this feeling that it was soon time to be going back to Wales. I had spent 21 years in Brighton, and I spent 19 of those years being the married man I should never have fucking been in the first place. I left home when I was 20 years old, looking for a new life, new start after a failed relationship with my childhood sweetheart. Maybe running away wasn't the answer, but it was the only thing that made any sense at that time. However, going back to the subject of that big store I worked in for nearly 3 years, I had some very happy times working there, until Stephen joined the company. He did not make a very good first impression, to be honest, and I think he knew that when it was too late, and tried his best to backtrack on that, but a first impression will never be erased. I called him out for who he actually was, and the rest of his time working in that shop was never the same again. After Janet left, he started to get more moody and groggy. She moved away from the area, and her new husband bought a house in Devon. So he knew he was never going to see her again. I kicked dirt in his face, on top of where he was, mentally, in regards to how he felt about her. Here again, we can't always have who we want, and love, it doesn't always work out that way. I hope Stephen finds a way to move on from all that. I know his head could not have been in a good place to hunger after someone that you will never be with. Admittedly, there will always be a member of the opposite sex that will get more under your skin than others. I think it is a subconscious thing, and that person, in some ways, reminds you of yourself. We have all been there to a degree, but that other person isn't you, and you cannot possibly know for sure how they feel, or where else their hearts may actually be. I lived with a woman for nearly 20 years and I never even knew her. Within the last 5 years of our marriage, I could see that she was no one like the person I first met, and it made me realize that people spend too much time together, and they end up running out of things to say to each other. Things become stale. It is what it is. I still love my ex-wife, even though I know it is over. 20 years is a long time to spend together. Nothing lasts forever in this life, and you have to be like the traveler, ready for change, because change is the only thing that is constant. This was a bit of a serious video, I admit, but we cannot be all laughing and joking all the time, because that is not reality. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Back again soon,